Florida hurricane season can turn a farm job into a housing, transport, and safety emergency very quickly. But an H-2A visa does not erase the core protections written into the work contract and federal regulations. In this presentation, we focus on official sources from the U.S. Department of Labor at dole.gov, the Electronic Code of Federal Regulations at ecfr.gov, the Florida Division of Emergency Management at floridadisaster.org, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration at NOAA.gov, and the Occupational Safety and Health Administration at OSHA.gov. The goal is simple: understand what the contract promises, what must continue during a storm, and what steps help protect your pay, your housing, and your safety. We will move through this topic in a clear order. First, the legal frame. Section 218 of the Immigration and Nationality Act, also cited as 8 U.S.C. 1188, and 20 CFR Section 655.122. Second, the contract basics that matter most on the ground: wages, hours, housing, meals, transportation, and the 3/4 guarantee. Third, the U.S. Department of Labor's natural disaster guidance for H-2A workers, including evacuation, replacement housing, and what happens if work is interrupted. Then we shift to Florida storm preparation, post-storm job hazards, and the official complaint routes workers can use when promises on paper do not match reality. According to 20 CFR Section 655.122 on ecfr.gov, the job offer must include the required minimum benefits, wages, and working conditions. The same rule says U.S. workers cannot be offered less than what is offered to H-2A workers. And as explained in U.S. Department of Labor Fact Sheet number 26B on dole.gov, the worker must receive the written work contract, often the certified job order, in a language the worker understands when necessary or reasonable. That contract is not a vague promise. It is the document that should spell out job duties, pay rate, housing, meals or kitchen facilities, inbound and outbound transportation, free daily transportation, hours and earnings statements, and the 3/4 guarantee. When hurricane season pressure rises, the safest starting point is often the exact language of that contract. On the official flag wage page linked from the U.S. Department of Labor, flag.dole.gov, the Florida adverse effect wage rate currently listed for many non-range H-2A jobs is $16.23 per hour. Fact sheet number 26F from the Wage and Hour Division explains that the employer must pay at least the highest applicable rate, which can be the adverse effect wage rate, the prevailing wage, a collective bargaining rate, or the federal, state, or local minimum wage. The official H-2A worker rights card on dole.gov also says workers must be paid at least twice per month at the rate stated in the contract, and must receive a pay stub or earnings statement listing hours, rates, deductions, and earnings. Another major protection is the 3/4 guarantee. Under Section 26 of the Department of Labor Fact Sheet Series, the employer must generally offer work for at least 75% of the workdays in the contract period, or pay what the worker would have earned to reach that guarantee. Housing and transportation are not side benefits in the H-2A program. They are core terms of employment. The U.S. Department of Labor H-2A Worker Rights Card states that H-2A workers are entitled to free housing and free daily transportation to and from the worksite. Fact sheet number 26 also explains that the employer must either provide 3 meals each day, subject to the allowed meal charge rules, or furnish free and convenient cooking and kitchen facilities. And on the official Florida Department of Health Migrant Farmworker Housing Guidance page at floridahealth.gov, the state explains that migrant labor camps and residential migrant housing must meet minimum sanitation and health standards under Sections 381.008 through 381.00897 of the Florida statutes, and Chapter 64E-14 of the Florida Administrative Code. In practical terms, when housing is unsafe, unsanitary, or damaged, that is not just an inconvenience. It is a compliance issue. The clearest official storm-specific guidance comes from the U.S. Department of Labor page titled Understanding Your Rights During a Natural Disaster and Recovery Efforts, available on dole.gov. That page says an evacuation does not automatically cancel the work contract. The employer still must follow federal, state, and local law, including evacuation and worker safety requirements. The guidance also says the employer must continue to provide free and safe housing, meals or kitchen facilities, daily transportation to the job site when work resumes, and the other required benefits in the contract. If the housing is damaged and workers must move, the employer must provide new housing free of cost and transport the workers there. And unless the employer receives special permission from the Department of Labor to end the contract early, the worker still has a right to the 3/4 guarantee. If the contract ends or the worker is sent home because there is no more work, outbound transportation and any unpaid inbound transportation or subsistence reimbursements still matter. For storm planning inside Florida, the official state source is the Florida Division of Emergency Management website, floridadisaster.org. Its Plan and Prepare page says every family and business should have an emergency plan, an emergency supply kit, and local alert access before a storm threatens. The Know Your Zone page explains that workers should learn whether their housing is in an evacuation zone, a low-lying flood area, a mobile home, or another unsafe structure, and should follow local evacuation orders when they are issued. NOAA says on NOAA.gov that people should prepare before hurricane season, have multiple ways to receive forecasts and alerts, and know what to do before, during, and after a storm. For farmworker households, the Florida Department of Health emergency materials also emphasize a disaster kit, important documents, medicines, water, food, and enough supplies for at least 72 hours, often more. If transportation, documents, or language barriers make evacuation harder, those problems should be raised early, before a warning becomes an emergency. After the storm, the work can become more dangerous than before the storm. OSHA says on OSHA.gov that hurricane and flood cleanup exposes workers to downed power lines, debris, unstable structures, contaminated water, heat stress, and personal protective equipment failures. OSHA's Hurricane E-Matrix adds a simple message: employers must evaluate the actual hazards at the site and select the controls, work practices, and protective equipment that fit that job. For farm work and recovery work, that can mean staying clear of energized lines, not driving over downed conductors, using proper gloves, eye protection, footwear, respirators when needed, and watching closely for heat illness during cleanup under high humidity. NOAA also warns that preparedness is not only about landfall. It is also about staying protected during the storm and using caution after the storm. If the employer sends workers into a visibly dangerous post-hurricane environment without planning, training, or proper equipment, that is a warning sign that should not be ignored. If the contract promises one thing and real conditions say something else, document early. Keep copies of the job order, pay stubs, hours, photos of housing conditions, transportation details, storm messages, and any texts or voice notes about evacuation, pay, or retaliation. The U.S. Department of Labor Wage and Hour Division explains on dole.gov that workers can contact the agency confidentially, and the H-2A Natural Disaster page lists the toll-free helpline, 866, for U.S. wage. For housing conditions in Florida farmworker camps, the Florida Department of Health is also part of the compliance picture because state migrant housing rules remain in force. The most important takeaway is this: hurricane season does not suspend the contract, the wage rules, or the safety rules. Knowing the official source names, the key section numbers, and the exact facts on the ground gives a worker a much stronger position when conditions start to